broken system chained and tangled up in lies. Voices shouting, screaming in defeat. Politicians playing games under darkened skies. Hope lost in the dust of the street. Whispering conspiracies, drowning in their lies. Echoes of freedom, lost in cries. Spin the wheel of fate, let's see who rise. But this game will bleed you dry. Welcome to the bullpen, where the weak will survive. These broken dreams we defend, trying to keep alive.
Good morning and welcome to the Bullpen.
Good morning. You can hear
11.
me after the video. Yay!
I can. Yeah, we're done with EV Mux. Mad has been nice enough to let us use his StreamYard backstage and try to do it this way to see what's going to work out best going forward. But yeah, we had the interview this week, so we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about the Arlington supposed controversy. We got a few people already here, so good morning, Josh Hammond, Aaron Ratliff, Drew Lavers, Davina Duckworth, Mutant Banhammer, Slender, and Pope. So nice to have you all here. Please share out the stream if you get a chance, because we would like to grow this this Sunday morning show. So how you doing, Chad?
I'm doing pretty good. I've had a better 24 hours than Kamala's comms team has, so that's that's for sure.
Yeah,
Whoever was tweeting for her.
What have they been thinking over the weekend going against Gold Star families? That's asinine.
And God help them. I know they probably wanted to trot Walz out there to try to do damage control after the interview, but
yeah, but he's got his own situation.
It was like when you watch if you watch baseball and you ever watch the home run derby, you know, the guys who pitch the balls, they specialize in just lobbing those fat pitches right down the middle on the upper swing so the guy can uppercut it out of the park. That's what Kamala's team did with that Arlington chat yesterday, and Trump's guys were ready and fired like nukes from orbit on him. So
Tom Cotton has already been all over the Sunday morning shows, just destroying the narrative.
Yeah, so it's I think it was the wrong fight to pick. It reminds me of a lot of 2004 with when the Swift boat stuff was going on. It speaks to an institutional blind spot within the Democrat and liberal viewpoint. They just don't get some of that military stuff.
Well, because
So
they don't pack the military for the most part. I mean, I'm not going to say nobody on the left does, but yeah, they're not the ones known for actually giving a crap.
And Slender's right. I think at the behest of probably some people thinking they were going to help the Biden Harris Walz team, Arlington made a statement trying to like make Trump look bad, and it's created a terrible news cycle for an entire week for him as a result. So
Yeah.
but that's what happens. The levers of bureaucracy think they're helping, and they don't understand. Even the people who run Arlington, which is funny. Anyway, so
Huh.
but I think the biggest story of the week had to be finally after the anointed one 2.0, even more anointed than Obama, because she didn't have to run for anything.
Yeah.
Sat
Still
down
hasn't
for-
had a single vote.
Yeah, sat down and did an interview. And Eric is right. We having X and independent media breaking
Yeah.
through the media spin, because you can see how all in, like, when we do this interview, Dana Bash, speaking of someone trying to lob home run pitches,
Excuse me. It's Dana.
Dana, what, I'm sorry. Now I feel like culture, but Dana Bash. She asked the question and gave Kamala the answer to give in her question like 4 times. When she's like, you say you've changed positions and this like that. Is it because you've been in office now and you've seen how things, you've gained more experience and so you understand better? And then and God help us, Kamala had these questions in advance clearly. And she still was like, my values, they must have test marketed that phrase or something. My values have not changed. That set Trump up, and his comms team again gave them just a fat pitch to knock out of the park with her values not changing. Like, that immediately sets them up, and they can interclip all the audio and video of Kamala going, I'm going to ban fracking. No more fracking. Pennsylvania's going to love that. I mean, the interview was a trainer. And then I know we'll talk about it once the visual's on screen, but the way they framed Walz to her left, her in the center looking diminutive, and Dana Bash to the right.
Yeah.
It in a visual,
the whole
language
setting
sense,
was horrible.
Yeah, it did nothing. I went and saw Reagan last week, and we talked a little bit out on our show on Friday. One of the things Reagan was an expert on, and it came from being in Hollywood,
Time in Hollywood.
hitting his mark and knowing that visuals mattered, right? There's a famous story in political science classes, you learn about it. In 1980, they were doing a story, I think it was on 60 Minutes or one of the CBS news shows, where it was Ronald Reagan was going to destroy and gut Social Security, right? Haven't heard that one before against any Republican.
Yes.
But
Push grandma over the cliff.
What they were airing was video footage of Reagan like visiting seniors and looking happy, and the seniors looking happy. But the audio is all about how he's the worst guy ever for a thing. And he sent a thank you note to the producers, and the producers didn't get it till when they read the thank you note. It was like, most of the older people I know, unfortunately they don't hear so good. So all they did was look up and see a story on CBS about Reagan and seniors and me looking happy and them looking happy. And that was the visual. Right. Yeah. And, that he was like, thanks, that was a perfect image for people to see, because they're not going to listen to the audio part. They're going to see the image and see that these older people were very happy to talk with me and happy for me to be there.
Yeah.
So,
well, and yeah, those people also would have known Reagan very well from his time acting. I mean, let's not forget that Reagan wasn't he the president of the Screen Actors Guild?
Yep, he was. Of course, at that time, the Screen Actors Guild was actually kicking communists out of their ranks, and not
right. Not all becoming communist.
Now it was. It's interesting because historically, Reagan did when he testified to what is known now the House Un-American Activities Committee, which has gotten a terrible reputation because of the whole blacklisting thing, that because Hollywood controls that narrative, and for 40 years after, they made movies and television shows about how innocent people were just destroyed as a result of not being named in the House Un-American Activities Committee. What they leave out is that most of them were dyed in the wool, paid by
Were actual
as confirmed by KGB files that came out after the fall of the Soviet Union, were being paid. And I mean, it's much closer to, if you've ever seen the Coen brothers movie about with George Clooney and Josh Brolin, Hail Caesar, where it's like communist professors indoctrinating Hollywood people. So but it pointed me, they were really communists there, and they were really trying to subvert. The difference is we had a bulwark of actual genuine patriotic Americans in the upper echelon of the Screen Actors Guild. Ronald Reagan, I know Jimmy Stewart, John Wayne. These guys were like, we love our union, but F communism, get out. So
when men were actually masculine in Hollywood.
So they learned that lesson, though. They went underground, and they learned from Reagan too. Since then they have done their best to never give visual narratives to Republicans again, and they've pretty much owned that, because they've had so many people in like the creative spaces that they bring in to produce the like without outside of Trump, when he's run his RNCs. The RNC is usually an S show compared to the Democratic National Convention in terms of production value and smoothness, and the way and optics for stuff. Trump, to his credit, because he knows TV, has made the RNC much better.
Yeah. Eric had said, I love the joke, Trump might have not learned much from the WWE, but he damn sure learned to always know where the hard cam is. That and his own show, The Apprentice. I mean, remember, he was one of the most famous people on the planet for that show, because that show was doing huge numbers. Which you can't find it
anywhere on the internet, apparently. Used to be rerun on CNBC constantly. All sorts of, they've memory
like Bar Rescue.
Exactly.
Yep.
But so Kamala's interview optics, I guess if you want to, should we?
Let's just roll one clip from it, because I think most people that are in our audience probably already saw a lot of the clips. But we'll go with one about minute and a half clip. Just
Josh
to
Hammond
show
with the famous scariest words you can hear from Ronald Reagan. I'm from
the government, and we're here to help. All right. So we'll check out this one clip, and then we'll also show the ad that Trump campaign did after it. So
how should voters look at some of the changes that you've made, that you've explained some of here in your policy? Is it because you have more experience now and you've learned more about the information? Is it because you were running for president in a Democratic primary? And should they feel comfortable and confident that what you're saying now is going to be your policy moving forward?
Dana, I think the most important and most significant aspect of my policy perspective and decisions is my values have not changed. You mentioned the Green New Deal. I have always believed, and I have worked on it, that the climate crisis is real, that it is an urgent matter to which we should apply metrics that include holding ourselves to deadlines around time. We did that with the Inflation Reduction Act. We have set goals for the United States of America, and by extension the globe, around when we should meet certain standards for reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, as an example. That value has not changed. My value around what we need to do to secure our border, that value has not changed. I spent 2 terms as the Attorney General of California prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, violations of American laws regarding the illegal passage of guns, drugs, and human beings across our border. My values have not changed.
She really wants everybody to know her values have not changed.
And the way she emphasized it was the worst thing she could have done. Because
she's flip-flopped on everything.
No, she's got to pivot. She's got to. Because
she has to. But
she doesn't have the old Scranton Joe ability to, kind of just all shucks his way around the fact that he was a very terrible policy-wise president.
Yeah.
Biden, I mean, and it is what it is. Biden had a relationship with working class voters in that area for years that some of them were willingly able to blindly decide they'll go with Joe over Trump because they thought he was, at least old Joe will be, no mean tweets, right? He'll be regular.
He's a
And-
moderate. He'll bring us all back together again because he's not one of these hardcore progressives, and he's really just a kind old man.
So it was said a lot. I remember in 2016 this came up a lot. Like Hillary Clinton, one of the reasons there's so much of a male gender gap was that Hillary Clinton reminded men of what their ex-wife, like their worst image of an ex-wife. Kamala reminds them of their worst image of like the woman from HR.
Yeah.
Who just fucks everybody's day up. Pardon my language. Screws up everybody's day. Like she's there to like give you word salad and just drone on and just screw things up. And yeah, but the value's not changed. It was a perfect setup, and I think you've got the Trump ad for them to just be able to put that next to every statement that just turns off independent and I guess influenceable voters, because in the end there's a lot of people who have locked in their thought process, so it doesn't matter for that. Like they're not changing you and my mind, right? We're locked in.
Right.
So it's the influenceable voters, the people who are like, yeah.
It's the supposed undecideds or the ones that don't have a opinion already. So, yeah, Trump, they immediately after the interview released this ad, so we'll show it real quick.
Everyday prices are too high. Food, rent, gas, back to school clothes. That is called Bidenomics. A loaf of bread costs 50% more today. Ground beef is up almost 50%. There's not much left at the end of the month. Bidenomics is working. The price of housing has gone up. It feels so hard to just be able to get ahead. And we are very proud of Bidenomics.
I mean, that's one of the ads that they released that's basically just Kamala arguing against Kamala. I mean, at this point, all she has is to run against herself because they're the ones that caused all the issues, and they're desperately trying to get away from any link between Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. And we had all the controversy, with J.D. Vance trying to link Kamala Harris to the Biden administration. It's like, she's the freaking VP. She's probably in charge right now. I mean, that's another thing we could talk about. Joe Biden's been on vacation for like 17 days straight. He has not done anything for 17 straight days. He's sitting on the beach at the moment.
So I did find the one that they cut from the
directly
interview.
from the interview. Yeah.
So here you go. This was the Comrade Kamala ad.
Please not change.
Yeah.
Reduce red meat specifically.
Yes.
The Boston Marathon bomber. They should be able to vote.
I think we should have that conversation.
Abolish ICE.
Yeah.
Would you ban offshore drilling?
Yes, I'm in favor of banning fracking. I am prepared to pass a Green New Deal. I support a mandatory buyback program. We're not going to treat people who are undocumented and cross borders criminals. The idea that more police equals more safety, that's just wrong.
Policing, as we know, goes all the way back to slave patrols and that idea of...
You are absolutely right.
Where do you stand on defund the police?
We need to take a look at these budgets.
Do you ban plastic straws?
I think we should.
70 to 80% tax rate.
I think that's fantastic.
Chip in now to the Minnesota Freedom Fund.
How dare we speak Merry Christmas?
Yeah, I am radical. I do believe that we need to get radical about what we are doing.
Yeah, there are so many different ways to hit her on all this crap because, like Soul Assassin said, you're in office now. You're effectively the president right now. Why are you not doing these things that you're saying you're going to do? It's because you don't believe in any of the things you're saying as a candidate while you actually have the levers of power.
Yeah, and that's I get like the message. I think we see now exactly why they're they kept her in the bubble for as long as they could get away with, and why they're also now throwing out this BS about we need open mics for the debate, because that's where they want to have her moment where she tells Trump, "Excuse me, I'm talking now, Mr. Trump."
Yeah, I'm speaking. Reclaiming my time.
Yeah. Excuse me, buddy. Buddy, I'm talking, buddy. Buddy, can I finish? Can I finish?
Hey, buddy, can I finish? South Park. Yeah.
Yeah, that's they're setting, because that's all Kamala knows how to do. I saw some audio clips floating around Twitter this week also of like going back to her first like DA debate, like for San Francisco. She did the same thing. It was a radio debate, and where the guy was trying to answer something, she interrupted him, and then he started talking again, and she was like, "No, I haven't finished. Excuse me, I haven't finished." I was like,
yeah,
Kamala
that is her debate tactic. That is
has,
what she thinks debating is.
She's like a toy. She has 6 pre-programmed phrases that can come into play. So she's got to try to do, and that's why they're trying to set that up. They wanted her to be able to have notes. They wanted her to be able to sit down. I think that's also for the optics of, and it's a silly thing, but it's
compared
true.
To her.
There is a thing where people have a tendency, it's a psychological, you can go back and read studies on it. People view people who are taller as automatically a stronger leader.
Right. Well, and it worked with Trump and Hillary, because Trump towering behind Hillary while Hillary was speaking. There's quite a few clips of, just that exact scene where he's not necessarily to her side. He walks around on the stage and is right behind her and just dwarfs her. It makes her look small and weak.
Yeah, this is another one of the cell phones. The Biden people fought tooth and nail to have the live mics turned off. And that was because I think they were worried Biden would ramble incoherently. So these were the agreed upon debate rules. And it 100% did favor Trump. It reduced the thing that Trump always had a problem with in debates, especially with female voters, was they thought he was a little obnoxious the way he would. And this is, I think Eric nails it, the 80s era New Yorker, where he has to he's not going to let anything go by.
Right.
That's said about him.
In the 2020 debates we saw, I mean, that first debate with Biden was a disaster for Trump. He may have been factually correct, but the amount of interrupting that happened from both of them was a disaster. So them actually cutting the mics and not having live mics actually kept him controlled, and it kept him on message.
I think the only completely off topic they got was the golf game thing, which was proven 100% true when we saw the footage of Trump with DeChambeau.
Trump.
Yes. Speaking of towering, she looked like a little person sitting next to Walz. It was terribly framed. Terribly. Yeah. It was. It almost.
Well, and she looks like she's aged 100 years in the last few weeks.
It looked like a parent-teacher conference where Walz was the daddy, Kamala was the student who had done something wrong, and Dana was like, Kamala, can you tell us about what happened? So that everybody knows. And she's like, my values haven't changed. I'm still me. It was a terrible, you're trying, a female politician running for president already is at a disadvantage in that inherently the main role of president is commander in chief. You can disagree and not like it, but even female voters have a tendency to want a male in that role more than women.
Yep.
So generally women have to run. There's a reason that hawkish female politicians are the ones who usually win national elections, because they have to basically overcompensate the other direction to try to make up for being viewed as the weaker sex, to use the old phrase.
They have to try to appear tough. Yeah,
exactly. And so Kamala's been doing that. You can see it in the through line of her camp. They're promoting, she's vice president, but what is the main job they're promoting that she's had? Prosecutor.
Yeah.
Because that's a in-charge leadership, taking action job. Not senator.
Which is funny, because that's where she got destroyed by Tulsi Gabbard, is her prosecution role.
Which is why
and
I think the biggest secret Trump voting block of this election is black males.
yeah, well, there's a few polls that have they've got black voting up at like 39% in some polls for Trump, which is
I think that's
ridiculous.
a little too far, but I think that between 20 to 30%, which would be a marked improvement. Trump got around 12 to 14 by most of reputable analysis of the 2020 election. So if he moved,
not necessarily the voting numbers, but the approval numbers for Trump in a number of polls now from black voters, his approval number is up around 40 to 49%. That's not saying they're going to vote for him, but at this point in 2020, it was at 18%. So the approval numbers at least are showing that, yeah, people like Trump, or black people like Trump a lot more than what we saw 4 years ago.
I know. I mean, that is. I think these are the kind of people who, in 2016, there was a large segment of the white working class who was supportive of Trump but wouldn't tell pollsters.
Right.
I think the white working class has become more comfortable, especially post-assassination attempt, with being open in their, support of Trump. But the one group that is still has a giant, and I don't think we can even emphasize how much of a societal burden they get coming out open for Trump, is African Americans. Their entire leadership, traditional political leadership, their thought leaders, so to speak, the arts and science, all that is aligned to try to mock you and make you feel completely worthless for supporting Trump as a black person.
Yeah.
I mean, as bad as we have it, if we come out publicly supporting Trump, the vitriol that's aimed at, if you go on, I mean, it's all the stuff that people in Star Wars acolyte community say is sent to them that they can never share and never comes up. You can see openly shared by black conservatives, like the Hodge twins. You can look at the stuff
Tatum,
that gets posted
the Hodge
out there.
twins.
Tatum. I mean, look, Ice Cube. Ice Cube has done another video today, I think, or yesterday, coming out, but basically saying, the black people wake up. I'm not telling you who to vote for, but make people give you something for your vote. Make them accountable for taking care of problems that they say they will if they want you to vote. He did,
right.
The whole point of his video is anybody who tells you it's your job, your duty, your burden to vote for them because other people died for it is lying. He's like, people died so that, maybe people died and we have the right to vote because of it, but that doesn't mean you have to vote for any one group.
Yeah.
And the implication in that video is clear that he's who has traditionally owned the black voting bloc, Democratic Party.
Democrats.
What is he trying to tell them? Be a free agent, right? How do you get paid in sports? You be a free agent. When people compete, then you get the things you're asking for. It's and I think one of the things that has made clear, I think, to a lot of people in the black community this year is with the migrant crisis going on and how much they are just giving, ridiculously giving.
Yeah.
Free housing. I mean,
Oregon, the $30,000 for anybody who's not a U.S. citizen.
California,
to buy a house.
that wants to give them $150,000.
Colorado, they've let gangs take over apartment complexes and then said,
rent.
No, it's not happening. Yeah. Well, and one of the things that we've seen over the summer, Davina actually hit on, is the prosecutions and the persecution of Trump has actually helped black voters identify more with him. I mean, they've basically made it, like she said, made a martyr out of him by, prosecuting him for things that nobody else would be prosecuted for. And then the assassination attempt, of course, definitely helped his case as well. I mean, they see Trump as well, a portion of them are now seeing Trump as, dealing with the same things that they say that they're dealing with all the time. So that has gotten a block of those voters onto his side.
Yeah, and I think,
or at least sympathetic with him.
Yeah, and speaking of like just persecuting every little thing, we talked about a little bit, which was the Arlington National Cemetery visit he made this week. He was invited by the families of the fallen soldiers in the ones who fell during the Afghanistan debacle.
Yeah, the withdrawal.
The withdrawal that was, whatever. It was terrible.
That was done at a specific time, just to try to get a 9/11, photo opportunity for Biden.
Exactly. Yeah, Biden committed. He was like, we're going to be out by 9/11 so I can say that we're out by 9/11. So the 13 service persons died in that withdrawal. I think at least 10 families I know of, it might have been all 13, but at least 10 families were involved with this event this past week. And invited, and it wasn't just Trump. They invited Trump and Biden, basically, and Harris as the Democratic nominee to come to commemorate the loss. This is the anniversary of the loss. And instead,
and Biden's busy on the beach. Kamala was about 5 blocks away and couldn't take the time to do it.
Yeah. So instead of that, they do their thing where they don't go. And they're at the request of the family did approve a Trump photographer to be on site with them while they were doing it. So that, again, because they wanted publicity for their fallen family as much as Trump. I mean, obviously Trump wanted I'm not going to lie and pretend Trump wasn't going to be able to use this for, political gain. He wanted the images out there too. But every politician could have done it.
It's been done before.
Which is what I'm going to show, because the first thing that came out, as Slender said earlier, was the Arlington came out with a statement about how it is not allowed, and Section 60, which is the newest, basically the global war on terror zone of Arlington, where all the newest servicemen have been buried, is a zone where they can't do any kind of politicking. They don't do video. They don't do audio. It's supposed to be an image-free zone. So that's what they were trying to go after Trump, because the framing was somebody from Arlington, an employee, was going to the Trump people and telling them, you can't record here, you can't take pictures, this is a solemn zone, Section 60, and then there was a scuffle as a result of, and they pushed that person away. Turns out the family gave permission for the photographer to be there, and it also turns out this is an ad from Joe Biden in 2020.
Yeah.
To all our military members and families, especially those of Walz service members, thank you. Never forget Memorial Day. Right there. What's it look like he's doing?
Same exact thing.
Yeah, and then I know there's also Obama in 2012 had an ad with him and Michelle walking through the Section 60, the new section of Arlington where all the newest soldiers have been interned, laying wreaths, which is right, good for them. We should, I have no problem with images of our sitting presidents going and visiting Arlington and laying wreaths and being solemn and respectful of the servicemen who have passed. That's the part that should cross across party lines.
Yeah.
Trying to somehow make it like Trump was unique and different, because that's how they always try to frame it, that Trump is some unique Hitler-esque Leni Riefenstahl propagandist who's doing things that no one else does. And what they're really mad about is that Trump is a Republican who knows how to do this.
Yep.
And so they're trying to turn the table on it.
He understands branding and imaging. Let's hear from a couple of the Gold Star families, just so we can see what they actually were saying about this.
Vice President Harris, my name is Christy Shamblin. My daughter-in-law, Sergeant Nicole Leanne G., was killed in the Afghanistan exit at Abbey Gate on August 26, 2021. This year, for the 3rd year anniversary of her murder, we welcome President Donald J. Trump to Arlington to lay a wreath on the tomb of the unknown soldier with our family and to visit Nicole graveside. President Trump and his team were respectful. They listened to our stories and didn't talk much at all. We welcomed them that day and they were comfort to our family. Vice President Harris, I ask you, why won't you return a call and explain to us how you call my daughter-in-law's death a success? Vice President Harris, why will you not express your condolences yourself? Why have we never heard from you? And finally, why would you take a day where we celebrated the death of our loved one and use it to disparage not only them, but us? President Trump has called, President Trump shows up, and President Trump takes the time to hear our loved ones' stories. Why won't you do the same?
Trump released a number of these little vignettes from the Gold Star families.
I think I had counted 10 the last time I did.
Extremely effective if people actually see them. And although we typically don't do a very clip-heavy show, I do want to show at least one other, just to kind of, I mean, it's not just one family that's like, yeah, we'll speak out. No, it was 10, and there were, 13? So 10 of the 13 decided to make videos basically saying the same thing. So we'll watch one more that's about the same length, and then we'll also watch the Trump ad that has come out about Afghanistan. So,
Vice President Harris, my name is Steve Nakui. I'm the father of Lance Corporal Kareem M. Nakui. And your administration killed my son, deliberately in exchange for political theatrics so you could have a final day of the evacuation coincide with September 11th. Ignoring the advice of your generals, the Doha Agreement, and countless other veterans and members of Congress, denying the safety of the Afghans and the servicemen and women. Your choice to play politics in 2021 killed 170 Afghans, 13 U.S. service members, and wounded 45 of our service members, as well as countless Afghans. You were not at Dover for the dignified transfer. At no time have you reached out to me to offer your condolences, to offer thank you for Kareem's sacrifice and service. Not once have you honored him by saying his name, so I said it for you. You have disparaged all 13 who have lost their lives as well as their families, exhibiting your lack of gratitude by your silence. I agree with you on one thing, that a person like you should never and will never stand behind the seal of presidency. You are a DEI vice president, and contrary to our kids, the worst that America has to offer. I will pray for you, that God has mercy on your soul.
Yeah.
If words could kill.
Yep. And as Eric said, these are being released on Twitter. These are not just on Truth Social. Trump's account on Twitter is now posting these. And that's 2 of the 10. And that's going to be effective.
Yeah. And he, the way they did it, they quote tweeted Kamala for each one, and they also responded to the tweet for each one. So
yeah. So
yeah, I know Millie's probably going to vote for Biden, but that's mainly because I'm sure he will be unceremoniously fired as soon as if Trump gets back into the office.
Stupid flies. Yeah, and then just the last thing we'll play from this is the ad that was put together. I think this came out late last night or maybe the night before, but
Afghanistan. Yes. Were you the last person in the room? Yes. And you feel comfortable?
I do.
She agreed with his decision-making 100%.
That decision was to pull all of our military out first, to close down Bagram Air Base, to leave Americans behind.
Kamala Harris has touted her role on Afghanistan policy.
Now she owns it too.
On the issue of Afghanistan, we have seen a successful drawdown of the embassy, and thankfully, without any American casualties. Our highest priority right now is evacuating American citizens. We have made significant progress in that regard. It is a dangerous and difficult mission, but it must be seen through, and we intend to see it through as best as we can.
What happened? What was the exit strategy? When you were that last person in the room, what was told, okay, worst case scenario, if this happens and our Americans are trapped, what is our plan?
Super effective. And
very effective.
The other thing that came out in the last 48 hours is what Israel discovered in Rafah, which is American hostages executed within the last 5 days.
Yeah, that'll be the 1-2 punch. The Afghanistan.
Specifically, one of the hostages executed was the son of speakers at the Democratic National Convention. Like they have
been begging
Yep.
for something to be done.
And if you want to understand a comp for this, I look back in 1980 when Iran took the hostages in the U.S. and what it is to project American power and the respect that Americans have abroad. And it comes from feeling like you're being protected by your country, right? There's no mistake that when Reagan was elected, 45 minutes after he took the oath of office, Iran released the hostages.
Well, and you look at just Trump and Russia. I mean, people like to say that Trump was a toy for Russia, and it's like, no, Russia was scared to death of Trump because they didn't know what he would do next. They did not invade or do anything. Iran did not do anything. In fact, the Soleimani, assassination by us was very effective at keeping them at bay. And then the second Biden got in, things go crazy again because they don't respect weakness.
Well, because Biden brings back, right, we're going to play by the norms, right? The international norm isn't that you go decapitate the leadership. It's that you just bomb this little camp and that little camp. Like if Iran's proxies are bombing Americans in Iraq during the surge, we might blow up a affiliated terrorist group's base camp because we didn't want to do something directly against Iran. Trump's like, no, we're taking who's the guy who's actually orchestrating this in Iran. Track him. When he's clear, bomb him. And that's why it's a famous story now. The reason we didn't have any casualties in Afghanistan for about the year plus leading up to at least before Trump left office was because Trump negotiated with the Taliban, and they went after him for doing this. But it's the real world. The Taliban was going to run and is now running Afghanistan. You negotiate with who you have to negotiate, right? So we can't be in Afghanistan forever. We decided that. So we're leaving. We have to negotiate who's going to take over. But what Trump did is during the negotiations, he had the head of the Taliban there, and he came in with a little folder, and he told the translator to translate exactly what he's going to say. And he said, if any American dies, and he handed him the folder, and it was a satellite image of his house. He's like, you will die. I don't care who it is, what happens, or why. You are responsible for every American there, and if one of them dies, you will die. And then Trump left the room and is like, continue negotiating. And isn't it amazing? After threatening the very top guy for the Taliban, that nothing happened to American soldiers for that while. Because it is exactly what you do. Because that's what Trump did.
It's peace through strength. That is the Republican, way of dealing with most foreign policy, or it has been. Reagan did the same thing since we were talking about Reagan earlier.
Yep, and it was the best decade that led to the next best decade of America in the 20th century economically and anyway. But Trump also did that with Kim Jong Un.
Yep.
Because when they were having a friendly
Little
chit
Rocket
chat,
Man.
they were having a friendly chit chat, and the Kim Jong Un was like, I have a button at my desk that can launch ballistic missiles, and Trump was like, I have one too, and I have a lot more, and they work.
Yeah.
And he was like, and he started laughing a little bit, but the message was clear, like, ha ha ha, I know you have maybe a couple, I have a lot.
But we had also been watching
Yeah.
Kim Jong-un launching missiles and having them fall into the ocean because they failed out.
Yep, which is, I mean, this is the idea. Oh, hey, Floral. Yeah, I do.
I watched Floral's sermon this morning. It was a good one.
Nice, good. But yeah, the idea that the optics of the current administration, as reflected by Kamala Harris, having their political convention, bringing the parents of this hostage on stage to speak, which clearly, by the way, would have been known by Hamas that this happened. And the fact that this hostage was executed just this past week, discovered by the Israeli Defense Force when they found some of the tunnel works in Rafah again.
Yeah, they said they were probably executed the day before or 2 days before the IDF got there. So one Israeli American and then 5 Israelis.
And I know there's people who have feelings about joint citizenship and whatever. This kid was an American. It was known he was American. And this is something Ronald Reagan's president, that doesn't happen. It's
Trump is president, doesn't happen.
Doesn't happen. So what? Yeah. So yes, the hostage was killed probably this past week. Probably,
well, like days ago.
Yeah, probably just a matter of from today, probably about 5 days ago, roughly.
The IDF was closing in. Execute the hostages.
So when the IDF got there, they said that the bodies doing the unfortunate work that had to be done were probably dead somewhere between 24 and 48 hours, because it's not exactly given their condition. So
let's remember, this is the exact place that Biden and Harris were telling Israel, no, do not go in there, do not do anything. I mean, they've hamstrung Israel at every chance they get. They've still got, 7 U.S. hostages? I believe.
Yeah, and we're approaching the year anniversary of them taking them.
Yeah.
We are, I believe, how long was it? I think the hostages were there for just over a year. When did they think they got taken in 79? So it's roughly similar in terms of time that they've been, taken.
Yep.
The idea, I mean, again.
And the fact that we have done nothing about American hostages taken by Hamas.
So what we should be doing is...
The current administration is doing absolutely nothing to rescue Americans. I mean, that tells you a lot about where their priorities are.
And we know where Hamas
they're
leadership
appeasing
is.
Iran.
Hamas leadership is in Qatar. Qatar is a place where we could put pressure. Qatar, whichever way you want to pronounce it. We could immediately, like when Trump was in there, I could tell you what he would go to Qatar and tell them, there's American hostages being held. I want them released. And Qatar would be like, that's Hamas. And you're like, yeah, and Hamas is being housed by you.
Yep.
And if Hamas doesn't let them go, you are being held accountable. And Trump wouldn't necessarily always use military, right? One of the things Trump did that's great is he understood that the biggest lever we have to actually force action is economic, we can, through our economic levers, and I'm not talking about embargoes or anything like that. I'm talking about real actions, tariffs, trade deals, cutting people out. Like, there's all sorts of stuff you do that's legitimate. I don't like these embargoes tend not to work as well. Look at what happened when we did that with Russia and Ukraine. Russia's economy is better than it's ever been now because you know why? Oil is still high in price, and that's what the petrodollar does. And we push Saudi Arabia away again. So Trump, you put the pressure point when you need to. We would just be like, hey, Cutter, we're not going to do anything, but I'm going to tell my friend Bibi that whoever he wants to strike wherever in Qatar is a-okay with me. And then he lets Israel take the international hit, for maybe launching the missiles, but Qatar might have their leadership decapitated. There's a lot of real politic type things you could do.
That's also the implicit threat that I'm going to let Netanyahu do whatever he wants. That also says we're backing Netanyahu's plays. Instead, they have done for decades, they try to keep Israel on a leash when you don't do that with any other country in the world. I mean, what other country is kept on a leash and told, no, you can't do this, you can't do that? I mean, this is a country that literally there's chants right now from the Democrats from the river to the sea. It's asking for the annihilation of Israel.
It's funny. One of my I have one of my favorite sci-fi authors named Dan Simmons. Did great Hyperion, Cantos.
Yeah.
Did another book series called Ilium, and he I read an interview because Olympus and Ilium, there's a lot of stuff going on in those books, but they're set in the far future, and this is another theme that's present in Hyperion as well. He's he's a conservative guy, which is nice to find in an author like that. But when he was doing interviews, when I was trying to think of some consistent through lines for my far future, what would still be happening in the far future to cause strife and problems, he's like, there'd be people still trying to kill Jews. He's like, it's happened for since they've been around. We've got a few thousand years of history that it keeps happening. So you know what? That's what I'm going to write in. One of the plot threads in the book revolved around using technology to try to eliminate and come up with a solution to that from the eyes of bigots and people. And I was like, I can't really argue with his logic because some of the players have changed on who's doing it, but there's been a consistent attack on the Jewish faith from the beginning. So there you go.
And it's more projection because it's what the left does. Because what we've seen over the past 8 years now is that everybody that would vote for Trump, they're just far right Nazis. It's like your party literally has a contingent right now that outside of the DNC is calling for the elimination of the Jews.
They tore down security barriers to do it. They were
but it's like I said, it's the projection that anytime you hear the left saying something about the right, you can guarantee that they're doing it.
Confession through projection.
Every time. It's an Alinsky tactic. It's a communist tactic. We see it all the time.
Yep. I'm so taken aback. This should be all over every news channel, the fact that an American hostage was executed after almost a year, right? Nothing.
And there's still others.
And there's still more.
But I'm seeing it nowhere.
And we're not doing anything because, and this is the dark truth of it, because the mass media is on a team, and they know that they look back, they do learn some lessons, and they look back at Jimmy Carter and they're like, oops, we covered it way too much. If the Iran hostage thing was going on now, they would give it an update once every couple weeks for like a minute and move on.
Meanwhile, you've got a COVID death ticker going on for the whole last year of Trump's presidency.
And magically the flu had no deaths. And
yeah.
Isn't it crazy?
You don't hate the media enough.
Exactly. And they, like I said, they are, the media they are nasty. They are an enemy. Like, the media should be a rabid, and this is one of the things the founders got wrong. And I don't blame them, because they just assumed based on human nature it would happen. But they got it wrong. Was that an independent press, as facilitated by the First Amendment, would create a basically fifth estate, as France
fourth
called
estate.
it, the fourth estate, whichever estate, that would be basically a check on power in all forms by sharing abuses of power. What the founders didn't count on is that they could become a captured institution,
infiltration by one side,
through money, just like everything else, through money and all. I mean, the CIA used to pay papers directly to report stories, and then they got in trouble for doing that. So instead of paying them directly, what they did is they embedded, like, you watch CNN, right? You see a guy named Jim Sciutto, right? And he's their national security correspondent and anchor. And you're like, okay, so that makes you think he has credibility, he's independent. He was an Obama national security advisor. He was an appointee. And now he's quote unquote objective. We've talked about Stephanopoulos. He was a spin doctor for Clinton.
He was a campaign manager for Clinton.
Yep. Jake Tapper worked for Democratic congressmen and senators as public relations. And then he moved into being media. There's only one way that works, right? You know who you never see become an anchor is someone who worked as a Republican press secretary. They might get to be a talking head, but they never get to be the anchor. The only person who moved into being an anchor was Nicole Walz, and that's because she's useful in that she threw Republicans under the bus, and she did it with McCain. For all these people saying Trump is some unique threat to democracy, remember that they did that with Nicole Walz. Nicole Walz was doing that with John McCain, who has now become their greatest hero, right? Everybody loves John McCain. Nicole Walz,
the same way they hated Romney until Romney didn't win, and now, I mean, Romney is a rhino through and through, and now he is their hero. He's one of the things saving our democracy. It's like the whole talk of that's one other thing I wanted to touch on from the interview, that, you know, after RFK came out, you know, as a Democrat, basically saying that he's supporting Trump, and I mean, we all know that he's probably going to get some kind of cabinet position within the administration. Mm-hmm. They asked Kamala, well, would you be willing to have a Republican in your cabinet? And it's like, you know, of course she says yes, because at this point she's copying everything that Trump says, from taxes on tips to a border wall to now, I'll put a Republican in. Yeah, putting Adam Kinzinger or Cheney in is not putting a Republican in your cabinet. I mean, I think we can all agree that neither of those people are Republicans in any way anymore.
Can we also agree on the irony of the fact that they would put a Cheney back in, given what they said? I mean,
one of the most evil men in the history of the planet.
Liz Cheney's politics from a foreign relations standpoint are god awful. It's shitty. She's terrible. She'd want to go to war with everybody. I can't ever emphasize how much that would be like neocon 3.0, I guess, would be her. And the idea that because they just want to own Trump, they would put her in any position of power. She shouldn't be anywhere near anything. She's terrible.
No. And obviously, the Republicans have said, no, we don't like her. We can't stand her. The Trump TDS that we got from her and Kinzinger I mean, we took him out of office. We said you do not speak for us in any way, which is ultimately what our republic is founded on. You know, you elect somebody to speak for you, and we did not like them as speakers on our behalf. So I mean, that whole thing in the interview was also just insane. The other thing insane was Walz basically just dodging the question about his stolen valor.
Bad grammar.
Complete
oh my God.
dodge. Yeah, I don't speak well grammatically. Yeah, well, 20 years of it, and having it in writing, even having a ghostwriter, you know, not correcting the ghostwriter on that bad grammar. I mean, come on. We all know what is going on there, and he could not just apologize or admit to it. I mean, not that we thought he would, but the complete dodge, and then trying to throw it back on Vance, saying, I would never demean another service member. No, you've demeaned service members. You called the National Guard during the,
bunch of cooks.
You said these
19-year-old
19-year-olds are just a whole bunch of cooks.
Which, by the way, he's now saying, I served 24 years in the Minnesota National Guard, so I'm a full-throated veteran. At the same time as saying that National Guard is podunk nothing work. You know, like, which way is it? But here, the way they framed that question, even as bad as Wall's answer was the way they're going to try to get rid of this one. So they are going to try to conflate the entire stolen grammar thing into that one statement where he said he carried weapons of war.
Right.
That way people think that that's the only thing he did. And
rather than the rank, rather than dropping out of the military as soon as he found out they could be deployed.
And here's the thing. That is because when you see that clip, as bad as that clip is in terms of him, because we know he was doing it for political gain and lying and all that shit. It's of the average normie voter is going to be like, okay, that's just a slip of the tongue. It's not the biggest. And they would move on from it. Right. So this is going to pay attention, people. This is going to be how they're going to do it. Every mainstream reporting on the stolen valor thing now is going to just be on that weapons of war quote, because they're going to try to make people think that's the only thing that was there.
I get what you're saying. I think it's going to be worse than that. I think they're just going to memory hole it now and say, well, he explained it. But yes, they were trying to distill all of the stolen valor down to that one sentence, not everything else. I mean, if they do bring it up, you're right. That's what they're going to bring up is the one sentence. But I don't think they'll bring it up again. I think they're going to consider this a open and shut case until you get to the vice presidential debate, when Vance will definitely be bringing it up. I think it'll be memory hold until then.
I agree. I do think there was another news story that came out that I found from Walz this week that was funny. It was, again, on X, not being reported, main stuff, which was that Walz in 2006, when he's doing his first campaign for Congress, tried to claim that he had won an award from the Nebraska, because he moved from Nebraska to Minnesota, from the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce for like military business liaison whatever thing he said he won. And in 2006, the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce wrote a letter to his campaign saying, and it was like, the guy who wrote it was like, I've been the president of the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce for 10 years, and I've been a part of the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce for 30. You've never won anything. You've never been a part of it. You've never won an award, and we're not trying to say why you would say something like this, but you need to stop saying this because it's not true. Walz is a serial liar, inflating stuff I mean, people who do this always do this.
See
and
Joe
now
Biden.
we're seeing Joe Biden doing it. Walz has inflated for the sake of his own aggrandizing himself at every step of the way. The fact that he still, for years, referred to himself as a command sergeant major, and in fact got introduced several times at DNC events as Command Sergeant Major Walz, and didn't immediately correct it again. Because this is after the story is broke. This is after it is a problem. And he should know better now that when he sat there and got introduced as Command Sergeant Major retired Walz, he should have said, no, Master Sergeant. I was just a Master Sergeant. You know, like, you can do it folksy, but you need to fix it at this point. And he's still not doing it because he likes it. He's going to go back to doing it. He is, Davian is right. He's a sociopath. But that's where Soul Assassin is coming in about him.
Yeah.
Which is the other thing I think you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, well, his brother, who lives in Florida, is basically... I think we've seen enough reporting now that we can say that this is true. I mean, I still haven't seen anything from the actual brother. We've seen a few reports on Twitter, but brothers coming out against him saying, yeah, that man should be nowhere near any levers of power. I hate his whole platform and everything he stands for.
And that...
Which is a thing, but the only reason we bring it up is because at every turn, they will bring in one of Trump's crazy family members and try to have them, you know, say that Trump is horrible and, you know, speak out against him. It's a thing they do. So, yeah.
They did it with RFK.
Fight with the same rules. Yeah, they're doing it to RFK.
Yeah,
the whole family disavowing him.
You know, good for RFK. I mean, he's getting out of that deal with the devil. Maybe his family may not be as cursed by him doing this.
Well, I mean, we all know that both his dad and his uncle, at this point, with the politics that they had back then, would be Republicans at this point. The rest of the family has continued to get more and more left and progressive and crazy. But if they were around right now, if you took JFK from when he was president and just transported him to now, he would identify with the Republican Party far more than he would with the Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, ask not what your country can do for you is exactly the opposite of what the Democrats do at this point.
Southern Belle, I know that he still says, look,
RFK is not a conservative and he's not a Republican. He's got a couple good takes, and outside of that, no.
Here's where I'd say RFK is. He's a 40-60 guy. There's 40% of the stuff that we agree with him on, and there's 60% we don't. Not even a half. The thing is, the 40% that we agree on, there's a lot of work to do in that 40%, and he can be really useful. Tulsi is another one. Look, Tulsi was a Bernie bro. Like, so there's a lot that I probably disagree with on Tulsi, but you know what she's also not? A neocon. She's not a Forever War fan. She has a lot of good work that she could do in the Department of Defense or somewhere in that.
And she's somebody that I think actually cares about the country.
I would say Department of Defense or Secretary of State kind of range. Either zone, Tulsi could be super useful in help cleaning up a terrible bureaucracy. RFK, okay, go for broke, head of the CIA. Let's see what happens there. Hey, let's
declassify everything.
All the files.
Clean out the CIA, declassify everything. I mean, yeah. They have their uses, and they also, their endorsement, while they're not actual conservatives, Trump isn't an actual conservative. Trump is a New York liberal, but his policies work for the country. Yeah, he's not going to be on board with everything that a conservative wants, but he's effective. And having their endorsements is effective because in those swing states, the polling is showing that RFK was getting, somewhere between 3 and 6%. In states where 10,000 votes can separate it, 3 to 6% shifting, even if you only get a portion of it, shifting to Trump is a big thing because we need every vote we can get in this. Again, the projecting, we already know they're going to try the steal. So you've got to fortify it in every way you can. And the only way the Republicans can fortify an election is making the margin too big to cheat.
No, his daughter is CIA, nowhere near secretary position. All right, then put him in HHS. I'm fine with him in HHS.
There's places he can be at that
Health and
he
Human
would be
Services,
effective.
FDA.
That is, Because remember, the cabinet, sure, I mean they have some say in the room, but it's not them making policy.
No, what the cabinet can do very efficiently is fire people within the department.
Exactly.
As doing that. Now, I mean, if we want to go with like a cabinet of people who would fear, like the bureaucracy would fear in each department, F it. You could put Ron Paul in at the Fed. You could put put Tulsi in at DOD. Put RFK Jr. in at HHS, which oversees the FDA, and by the way, also Fauci's little department and all that stuff. So you could do that. I'm trying to think who else would really for each department. Commerce doesn't really do that much.
No.
Transportation secretary. I mean, I would put Ben Carson back in at HUD. He was doing good things.
Yeah, he was fine. I didn't have a problem with Betsy DeVos in Department of Education either.
Ooh, Department of Education. I would put who's the biggest guy for homeschooling? Corey DeSantis? Like, whoever that guy on Twitter is, basically, who's all about homeschooling. Like,
yeah.
Fire the entire Department of Education. What do I need? I need 5 accountants to just send checks back. There's no restrictions, no policies because you would need the Congress would have to dissolve the agency, the department. What the president could do is eliminate all the jobs.
Yeah, you can eliminate the jobs, and if you've got Congress, if you can't get rid of the department, if there's no stomach for that, you can defund it.
Well, that's the thing. Buried within the Supreme Court decision on presidential immunity was a through line on the unitary executive, which was there was a specific line that was like, per the Constitution, the executive branch is the president. Which is a unitary executive theory. Like, basically from the president flows all executive branch employees, meaning that the executive branch, by way of the president, he can terminate all these things about government protections for civil servants. Effectively is eliminated by that line of thought. Like, there's no civil service protection there. Everybody who works in the executive branch can be fired at any moment by the president for any reason.
They serve at the president's pleasure.
Exactly. So, and so that it'd be hilarious if the going after President Trump and leading to that presidential immunity Supreme Court decision gives them the legal, like, the
grounds,
the precedent to use the unitary. I mean, all they're complaining about Project 2025, all the, like, the Project 2025, if you read the actual, like, dismantling of the administrative state portion, stems from unitary executive. You have to believe in that to have the president vested with enough power to just eliminate 2/3 of the federal bureaucracy.
Yeah.
But going after Trump, bringing him up on those January 6th charges, it's what's led to a Supreme Court decision that specifically is applicable to a unitary executive theory to allow him to do that. They would have possibly made their own bed in giving Trump a judicial precedent at the Supreme Court level to fire them all, which is hilarious to me.
Yeah, it's an epic backfire on. I mean, they don't think ahead. They only think in the moment. I mean, they think ahead in that, they will constantly talk about globalism and trying to combat climate change, but they don't think about how their policies will affect them in the short run. I mean, look at Harry Reid and getting rid of the filibuster for judicial nominees. That came back to bite them. We all said it would come back to bite them. It came back to bite them, and that has been the downfall of many things that they held as golden calves. So it's the usual. I mean, they do not look at how this might affect and how it could backfire against them. They just do things. Kind of like them wanting to put all these rules on the Supreme Court. or to stack the Supreme Court. It's going to come back to bite you. I mean, the second somebody else gets in power, you can do the same thing or roll it back. But we're getting down to the last 15 minutes. Do you have the polling for this week? Because that's typically what we go to.
Yep, let's check in on our Trump versus Harris.
Real Clear Politics has a lot of registered voter polls and not a lot of likely voter polls this week.
Which is ridiculous.
And Rasmussen is the only one showing a whole bunch of likely voters yet again.
Yeah, the idea of doing registered voter polls at the back end of August. By the way, when early voting starts in some places in the next 2 weeks.
Yep.
There's the only reason we talked about it when we first started the show that there is a inherent advantage on registered voter polls towards Democrats, and why even in the best elections for Republicans, registered voter polls will generally still show Democrats tied or up. And that's why this is crazy. Now, Quinnipiac, which had a likely voter poll going from the 23rd through 27th, still was only putting Harris up 1. Then look at this. Yeah. Reuters, Yahoo, Morning Consult, 4-1-4. Now this one's got to scare them.
Yeah.
That's a registered voter poll. And look at this historically. We can see that in the same date in 2016 and in 2020, Clinton had the polling average at 4.9 and lost.
Yeah.
Biden had the polling average at 6.0 and shenanigans won.
And keep in mind, the margin of error typically tends to be around 3%.
Yep.
So both of them were showing, well outside of the margin of error.
Yep.
2 to 3 points out of the margin of error.
That's the specific general election. The most recent battlegrounds. Now these are generally, because they're usually done on just for
locally,
either locally in partnership. Hill and Insider Advantage. Now this one was just completed, right? 29th through 30th. So that just was done last week on Thursday and Friday. 800 likely voters. Trump up 1. Hill Emerson right before that, 25 to 28th. 720 likely voters. Trump up 3. Now these ones were registered voters, likely voter again, Trump +2. We talked about this one, I think, when it came out, that New York Times Siena poll, and how it was just a debacle of terrible poll mechanics.
The weighting. Yeah.
The way they weighted it. They had to weight it so hard to switch things around. So that one is clearly the outlier. But for the most part, it's still showing Trump with the advantage. We've got Nevada now, where I can see this one being basically tied. Nevada is a tough state because it's got a lot of Democratic institutions and machine work there. On the plus side for the Republicans, Harry Reid is gone. He ran that show for a lot of years and would make sure
he was the Willie Brown of Nevada.
Yeah, so he helped make things happen. I also think the Nevada is more inclined, the demographics of it suit Trump. By the way, for all these people who are more conservative principles, is that the Avengers theme song?
Yeah, my wife came out into the garage to drop some stuff off, and her phone started ringing.
Okay. But what I was saying, the more principles conservatives who are we should just Trump he's not appealing. Trump is the only guy who puts Nevada on the map out of the, Romney wouldn't do it. By the way, Romney, who as a Mormon has a very strong minority population within Nevada that should help swing the state for him, couldn't touch it.
Right.
They didn't do anything for him.
This is not a state that is in play for a typical Republican.
Yeah. Awesome one. He was polled to win in 2020 and lost, so knows. Yeah, Nevada's weird because basically it's Las Vegas, and if the unions can get their people to stay in line. Yeah. If the union, and that's what happened in 2020, the union people convinced them that Biden was a union guy and Trump wasn't, and so that was going to be good. The thing is, as Las Vegas as a city is dependent on good economy, because in bad economic times, guess where people stop going and dropping money? Las Vegas.
When you have no money to drop, you don't go to Vegas for a vacation.
Yeah, and especially now that sports betting is legal everywhere and you don't even have to leave your house to do it. There's a lot of people who aren't going to Vegas, so they need a good economy so people feel good about losing thousands of dollars in Las Vegas. Because if you're a dealer and you get a chip flipped to you when a guy was on a heater and that tip was like $1,000, you definitely want more people doing that.
And we're not saying that the polls are the end all be all. We just like to look at the polls on a weekly basis just to see kind of the snapshot of what they're trying to tell us is happening. Because ultimately what we're seeing is she got no bump.
Yep. Now here's the one where this is the outlier of outliers.
Bloomberg.
Wisconsin. By the way, this was Wisconsin at a +8 is ridiculous. We've now had Trump run three. This will be his third consecutive presidential election. We have two previous with Biden and Hillary, as you know, who are probably, I would argue, possibly more popular with Democrats at the time they ran than Kamala, maybe, probably. And they they only won Wisconsin. Like Clinton didn't win Wisconsin, and Biden only won by like 16,000 votes.
Yep.
And they're going to
don't know where those votes came from.
Yeah, but the idea that all of a sudden Harris would be up 8, especially when we have Iowa, where Trump is probably running 16 points up. There was it's a story that came out. It's been reported. There's a famous pollster for the main newspaper in Des Moines. All she does is Iowa, because Iowa's important for national politics because of its first in the nation caucus. And she spiked a poll this last week and a half because it was Trump +16. Basically, she's not going to put it out because she didn't want to. She's like, no, I can't. Because remember, polling right now is also to try to shape perception. And what happens is Iowa's demographics are so close to some of its neighboring states, it would defy logic for Iowa to be +16 Trump and then to put out results
and a neighboring
like Harris
state be +8.
+8.
Yeah.
It's just, it doesn't work that way. So they spiked it. They didn't publish it. Now, I'm not saying Trump is probably going to win by 16, but what it tells you is that Trump's margin in Iowa is going to be like what happened in Ohio, where for the entire lead up to the election against Biden, they were convinced Ohio was going to be a battleground, and Trump ended up winning it by 8.
Right. I mean, and the Dems are being crazy right now on a lot of this polling. I mean, they're trying to say that Florida is in play for Harris. I heard that multiple times last week, and it's like Florida has gone as far red as a state can go in the last 2 election cycles. And it is no longer a battleground state, and there is not a chance in hell Harris is taking it.
Well, the other thing is the election integrity that's gone on in there. With, you want to talk about fortified, with Ron DeSantis has rightly and happily fortified the legitimateness of the elections in Florida. And isn't it amazing how that tends to make things not just run smoother, they get their votes counted fast. As much of an S show as Florida used to be, think of how smooth it's gone compared to other states now. Like Georgia, which is right across the border from them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's why I don't. Trump is probably going to win Florida by 5, which doesn't sound as big a margin as you think, but in Florida terms, that's a pretty wide.
If you think back to Ohio and Florida used to be the 2 states that decided everything. Think Trump or think Bush Gore. I mean, those were the 2 states that everything hinged on. This year, it's Pennsylvania.
Yep. Then we got Michigan, which is looking. Taking the likely voter ones out both ways. Trump won. It's basically margin of error. Like this one, Bloomberg had that same crazy Bloomberg poll where they did the shenanigans, put Harris up by 3, but they gave it a 4.0 margin of error. So that could end up being of Trump 50 to her 44, like 45. It's statistically tied in Michigan, and I think that bears out with where we were at. Like,
well, and then our
Pennsylvania.
theory that certain people will not try to influence the election very much, like Whitmer, like Shapiro.
That's where
The ones
I mean,
they don't want to see Kamala have a chance at 8 years because they want to run in 4 years once Trump is out.
yep. And that's
So
why I've
will
said
they
this before.
will they sacrifice Democrat power for themselves? I think in every case you can see that the Democrats are willing to sacrifice the country for themselves in their minds.
And the honest truth is they know Trump isn't some grand threat against democracy. They're just
No, it's a
using
boogeyman
it.
that they've
Yeah.
made up. We've already seen 4 years of his presidency.
Here's
None of
what-
what they said happened.
Here's what I think is going to happen, and I've talked about it before. I think Trump wins Michigan and Pennsylvania based on that, because in Shapiro and Whitmer's mind, what they're trying to set up is 2008. They want Trump back in office to second term Bush him, where they can basically demoralize the Republican electorate for 4 years of him being in office, so that they can run a base election with the Democratic coalition and end up winning handily.
Right.
And that's a playbook that they did, right? From 2004 through 2008, they managed to capture, and they probably have a high thought that they'll get the Congress either at the initial win, either this election or within the first election after in 2026. And they'll have the Congress for at least half of his term to send subpoenas and burn things down to set it
Yeah.
up so that they can become the grand savior. And both of them, make no mistake, would be able to politely and in the background make it so that a very small shenanigans win turns into probably a slightly bigger but not that big win for Trump.
Right.
All you got to do is make sure that one FedEx or UPS truck of ballots doesn't make it to the counter on time. You know,
Well, and I mean, the funny thing is the problem that they'll have coming out of that, if they were to pull that, is if Trump does turn the economy around within that 4 years and
It's
everything
88.
starts working correctly again, then they don't have anything to run with. I mean, you can't. There will not be a second chance that they get if the economy gets turned around.
well,
They
this-
can't
here's-
pull. They can't pull the same shenanigans because
here's the
that's
other way they
twice
could
now
look.
that he's rescued the country out of.
But then they could look at it like 2000. Clinton had a pretty strong economy. The economy, we didn't have our downturn yet when that election happened. That was right after, the 2001 Silicon Valley bust. So Al Gore lost, right? He was he was on track to lose by more, but the media tried to tank Bush with the DUI stuff and the National Guard stuff. Again, National Guard stuff.
Yeah.
At the tail end, and it did drop Bush in the polls, probably enough to, and then with the shenanigans in Florida, they tried to steal it. Point being that Bush was going to win that one by a wider margin. If you're Whitmer and you're Shapiro, you look at that and say, like, even if Trump has a very strong economic rebound and second term, it could become 2000 where Clinton was really popular. People forget. And I don't like to bring it up, but Clinton was polling like approval ratings in the 60s.
Yeah.
Like, it was crazy. By 2000, he was like 60 to 65% in some approval polls. Because everyone was happy. Like, why would, and they didn't, and the media wasn't going after him like they did Trump. So because people at a certain point want to change up, right? If Trump's been in office by that point and Vance is considered a continuation of Trump, they might want to change it up again, and they could look at Whitmer or Shapiro as a young, and that's, again, this is how they'll frame it. I can be like 2000 where I'm just the younger, younger alternative to what had been around, and who knows who would come into try to run. So that's why if I was putting money, and I'm not encouraging you to bet, and I wouldn't bet, but if I was going to bet, I would think that Shapiro and Whitmer as being these people are so...
And Newsom.
And Newsom. Well, Newsom can't, there's
Newsom
no way...
can't influence it, but
yeah. But these people are so driven by their own egos and their own ambitions, and don't discount the fact that people don't actually like Kamala.
Right.
There's no genuine love
she was
or
more
admiration
disliked
for her.
than Biden just a month and a half ago.
And I'm talking within Democratic circles.
Well,
They
yeah.
didn't-
I mean, she lost 92% of her staff over the time as vice president.
I mean,
she is a person that nobody actually likes personally.
Yeah, we kind of moved on from it, but Obama didn't want her to be the nominee. They wanted the open convention to get a Mark Kelly or somebody who was basically the antithesis of Trump and likable. And Biden and Dr. Mick Biden over there, Jill, I think was the spearhead to snake them and put Kamala down their throats.
But it was also they hung themselves by having a DEI hire be the vice president, because you can't then throw her under the bus and skip her over because she's black Indian woman.
Yep. I can't wait for that debate if Trump asks her about growing up in Canada, by the way, because that'll be fun. Yeah, so the story of the polls is that she got no convention bump, that her interview has done nothing to help her, that I think this is if I had to give a correlation, this is going to be 88, where the mirage of fanciful polling for Dukakis through all of August evaporates once people, actually have to give real answers, and Trump wins pretty handily.
I also think the debate will be the only time we see her do anything else. She's had the interview. She checked that off the list. She'll have to do the debate, the one debate. They'll check that off the list, and then they will hide her because she is incapable of speaking off the top of her head. But all of this to say, as soon as early voting opens, go vote.
And then work
Do
on
not
registering
wait
other
until the last day. Get people registered, get them to the polls, give people rides, whatever you have to do. We play by their rules because those are the rules in place right now. Get out and vote.
Yep. So I think we've kind of come to the tail end of our show.
Yep. What do you got going on this week?
We're going to do our gaming on Tuesday, as we always do.
Yeah.
Yep. So we've got that. It's Friday. We are going to do the Ascendant Art podcast, 9 p.m. Eastern. So if you have not already, if you can go find Ascendant Art on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like our old stuff. We're trying to actually get found, and we're almost at 300 subs. Maybe eventually we'll get up to monetization. And then Saturday this week, actually, I'm going to be on Script Doctor's show on Saturday, Scripts on Saturday, and I'll be co-hosting with them on that to do a review of an unmade script. And this is fun because that show is pretty cool, because we actually, one of the first ones that we did, which was a John Madden biopic, where I did a video with him talking about all the problems with that script from a historically accurate for John Madden standpoint, is now in production with Nick Cage playing John Madden, which I don't agree with that casting at all.
It's a little weird.
Yep.
But
so,
we've
pretty
had
full
some
week.
situations where we saw what we thought is weird casting that turned out okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll wait to see it. So yeah, so it'll be a full week, and then we'll circle back next Sunday to see what crazy this week. This political campaign season has been off the charts for just.
It's just roller coaster ride.
Yeah, I mean,
we always seem to be on the. We never seem to have any of the climbing time. It's just we're always going straight down into the dive.
Yep. And because, like I said, any previous election, like the idea of American hostage being executed, would be a career ender.
Or having 13 die in your Afghanistan pullout, or the economy. I mean, there really is no reason that the Democrats should have any chance in this election. And yeah, some people will tell you, well, it's because it's Trump. I mean, I don't know if DeSantis would be doing better against Kamala, but I think we all know what we get with Trump, and I think we all would prefer that to anything that the Democrats are giving us. He's still the best president that I've had in my lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
As for me, tomorrow we've got the Monday Meltdown, and I'm also going to be doing a special show with that 70s rock band on his channel, his usual Monday show. We are going to cover the Canadian comedy show Shoresy, which is a spinoff of Letterkenny. We will also have a little bit of a tribute to the Goudreau brothers that passed away on, what was that, Friday night? Hit by a drunk driver while they were biking. They were in town for their they were groomsmen in their sister's wedding the next day. So that's gotta be a very difficult situation for a family. Not only do you lose the two brothers,
one of the wives is pregnant too.
Well, and Johnny, I think, has a very young child. So that was just a tragic incident over the weekend that affects the world of hockey, which, as you guys, most of you know, I do during the NHL season. We've got the Bourbon and Boarding Show. So we're going to be doing a little tribute to them and then talking about Shoresy tomorrow afternoon. So come check that one out over on that 70s Rock Fans channel. We've got the Tuesday night gaming stream, Thursday night throwdown on Comics Division's channel, which he will be joining us sometime soon for this show. And then a Sin and Art on Friday. So hope everybody has a great Sunday. We will catch you later. Thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing, subscribing, and liking the stream. Have a good one, everybody. And make sure you go sub to Chad. I put his the Sin and Art channel in the chat, so go over there and give them a sub. Thanks, everybody. Later.
Bye.